In this video, we are going to go over early learners' expectations. Let's start with the lowest reading level, which is 7A. Over here, the expectation is that the student will be able to repeat these words along with pointing. It's important that they learn to point at each word and also turn the pages by themselves if they can. Over here, you would just repeat, or you would say pins and buttons, and the student is expected to also say pins and buttons. Sometimes they might mispronounce these words, or they might not just be able to say some of them. Please keep a reminder that they had trouble with certain words. That way, you will be able to write it in the front. Over here, as you can see, there's nothing to grade because the student is just repeating words. But over here in this space, we normally write down the summary. And in the summary, we would include if the student was able to repeat at a score of 1, 2, or 3, which means if they were able to do it consistently, frequently, or sometimes. They are allowed to make mistakes, but if, let's say, the mistakes are more than 3-4 pages, then you would bring the score down to 2, and then even more mistakes would bring the score down to 3. The key points in this packet is to remember that the student has to repeat, point, and turn pages. If you forget any of these or need a quick description, you can always look at the bottom of the page of the first page. The pages going forward don't have the description, but the first page does. Going forward, in level 6A, this scorecard here changes to student recites. That will give you an indication that the priority or expectation from this packet is that the student will be able to recite or read the word by themselves. They're not actually reading the word, but they've seen the word many times, or they're using the picture and saying the words by memory. For example, here, they might just look at the caps and see the cake and say birthday, but they can't actually read or write out the letters saying birthday. And again, as you can see, there are pointers here, which means that the student is responsible for pointing, and you might have to remind them more than one time. Make sure they continue working with you for the entire packet, and then at the end, you would write the summary. And again, there's a small description on the first page. The key words for 6A is to recite, point, and turn pages. For 5A, it is broken up into 2 parts. In the beginning of 5A, the students are going over letter sounds, which means they are focusing on the letters in the packet and trying to just say the sound. So for this, they wouldn't just say B, they have to say B. And they can try using the pictures to say the words as well. During their score here, it says student says the letter sound, which means they were able to say these successfully. One tool you can use is the letter chart. For here, the letters along with a small picture is available to go over sounds individually, and there's also one that doesn't have pictures in the back. It's important that the child is able to say the letters or at least know what the letters are. And sometimes for little kids, even for 7A, 6A levels, they might not be able to write their name just yet. So a small reminder is that you might have to write their name and perhaps the time for them. In the second part of same 5A level, we move on to sounding out. And over here, if you forget, you can always look at the description. Student says the letter sound, and as you can see, the student is given words with multiple letters, and they have to sound out each letter and also say the word. So for example, over here, the student should be able to say f, a, n, fan, not f, a, n. Sometimes students do add an sound at the end of their letters. Make sure to write that in the summary. Another common mistake that is made, even in this packet, when they're going over letters, is confusing j and g, along with b and d. Make sure that if a student does have any problems with letter sounds, you take note of it and also help them to say the correct sound. This level also requires a spelling test, which we will go over later. Go. In 4A level, the expectation is that the student will be able to combine the sounds. So instead of saying s, p, the student will be able to say slip. Over here, they'll be able to say if they can do the combination vowel sound. Over here, they should be able to say p. This is a vowel combination, and this is a consonant combination. That is the main focus of 4A level. After this, they would complete a spelling test. This is an example of a 4A level packet that has a summary and an oral reading score, which is what we talked about here of 1, 2, or 3. So you would start with OR, and the note here is able to blend all consonant sounds, which, as we talked about, is k, for example, or sul, or tr, sk. These are all consonant combination sounds. And over here, it's important to also add a note that the student can improve on. Over here, it says trouble with nt sound, says nd instead. So again, make sure you keep track of what the student is confusing. That way we can have it written in our system and go over it again next time. In addition to this, the student has to take a spelling test. Remember, the spelling tests start from level 5A1 and then continue until the last early level. Over here, the spelling test will always have 5 words, and make sure the student's name and score is written at the bottom along with in the front page. You can write it as just the score and we'll know that it means spelling. And again, the time has to be written here as well. The slip should not be left on top because sometimes it can slide around and get lost. Make sure to keep the slip tucked into the packet so that we don't lose it. And in the last level, 3A for early learners, it's a combination of what they've learned through 5A and 4A, which is basically combination sounds for consonants like sn and vowels like o. But the words are also bigger, so they have to be able to decode all of these words. These are the 2 words that are put into this one word, and they should be able to say sn, o, a, n, snowman. And again, a summary will go over here, initials, along with how long the student took, and the spellings test score. For 3A level, you don't have to sound out the spelling test. You can simply just say snowman and they should be able to write it down. But again, their name, score has to be here and has to be tucked into the packet. The score will also include whether the student was able to decode consistently, 1, frequently, 2, or sometimes 3. Again, make sure that the OR is written here with the summary and it is circled so that we know which score the student received. These were the early learning expectations for Kumon. Now let's move on to early math requirements. Over here, we have the 5A math level, and you can see the instruction says, read the numbers in order while pointing to each one, which is what the student is expected to do. They will read all these numbers while pointing, and they will also have to count pictures while pointing. If they're able to do this, you can put a check here. And if you see them struggling or making a mistake, then you have to put an X and make sure to remember where they made that mistake. And it's consistently the same thing till the very end. Over here, for the summary, you can write something like student is able to point and read numbers consistently, but stops after 13. This is something that we noticed, so we made sure to write it down. And again, your initials should be up here and the time. This is just an example packet, that's why the name and date and time is not written. But this is what the 5A level will look like. In the next example, we'll be looking at 4A math level. Again, if you're concerned about what to go over, just make sure to read the instructions. Over here, the question is asking how many chocolate chips are there and to write the number in the box. By 4A level, students are expected to count and write. In the next page, the student is supposed to read the numbers in order, again, while pointing to each one, from 41 to 90. And then we move on, and they have to start writing numbers. Over here, they're doing the numbers in order, but as we keep going, there will be some pages where they have to write the numbers out of order. When they're completed, the students have to go over the numbers and you would write the summary. In this packet, it says students is able to read and write between 21 and 40, which is what they went over, 21 through 40. Student can also read in and out of order between 21 and 50. This page, they had to read in order. You can also check if they can read out of order. And lastly, we made the note saying could not read out of order between 50 and 90. So that would be from here to here. After this, it's important to write down the student's time and your initials. Again, this is just an example, so there's no information here. But if you're stuck on how to go over these packets, just read the instructions. Moving on to 3A level, it's very similar to 4A in that the students have to be able to read, write, but over here, there are special instructions where students have to fill in each circle with the missing number. That does not mean here. They have specific instructions that have to be followed, and the numbers do get bigger in this level. When they're done with their packet, afterwards, you would just write the summary in the middle, making sure to include if the student is able to write the numbers, read them in and out of order, and follow special instructions such as this. Then you write the time and your initials. As you can see over here, there is a grading rubric. For lower level reading and math packets, there is no actual grading summary. The summary is notes that we write after we have observed what the student is and is not able to do. This is in the middle of 3A math level. The next packet that we will show you will be a transition packet in the same level. This is 3A 71, which is the packet right after 3A 61. In this packet, the student will start writing the number that comes next and then go on to adding. For this packet, you would grade it and put the summary in the front. In the front, the summary would go here, just as you've learned from the grading video. And again, initials here and time here. This packet is considered an older student now, since they are doing these math problems on their own. So they don't have to sit with you when they're doing this. As a quick review, these are the examples of math levels in which students would have to sit with an assistant so that they can be observed and the summary can be written. However, once they move on to this transition period or higher levels, the student does not sit with an assistant to finish classwork. this student would have to complete this packet alone. This video explained the early Kumon reading and math level requirements.